There is a grain that has been growing in West Africa for 7,000 years. It cooks in 5 minutes, faster than any other grain on Earth. It grows on sandy, rocky, acid soils where wheat and rice cannot survive. It is gluten-free and high in the 2 amino acids missing from every major cereal crop on the planet. The Dogon people of Mali called it the seed of the universe. European colonizers called it hungry rice. Today, a single bag sells for $18 in New York restaurants. The farmers who grew it for millennia are still classified as smallholder subsistence producers. Nobody explained why this grain disappeared from global agriculture. The answer is not complicated. In the heart of the Niger River bend, archaeologists uncovered charred Fonio seeds pressed into pottery at Onjugu, their age confirmed by radiocarbon layers to be nearly 5,500 BCE. Geno, a settlement older than Rome or Athens, yielded Fonio grains from 3,300 BCE, and again in layers dated to 2000 BCE and 1500 CE, an unbroken record of cultivation that stretches back 7,000 years. These are not scattered traces. Fonio's presence is layered, continuous, and unmistakable, running through the rise of West Africa's earliest cities. The Dogon called it Wurokono, the seed of the universe, and embedded it in creation stories. Yet, when French colonial agronomists arrived in the late 1800s, they bypassed local names and meanings. In the 1889 Bulletin agricole de l'Afrique occidentale française, Fonio appears as riz de la faim, called hungry rice, described as a poor substitute, fit only for empty stomachs. British officers soon echoed the phrase in their own reports, folding it into the language of military rations and export catalogs. By the early 20th century, the term hungry rice was codified in scientific footnotes and trade ledgers, reducing a royal and ritual grain to a marker of nutritional lack. The renaming functioned as a mechanism of erasure, overriding millennia of status and ceremony with a label that signaled inferiority. The paradox is stark. The oldest documented African cereal, grown for 7,000 years and revered as a cosmic seed, was reclassified by outsiders as a food of last resort. The contradiction is written in the archaeological layers and in the language of the colonial record. Fonio's royal and ceremonial standing did not fade with the rise and fall of ancient cities. Archaeobotanical digs at Sadia in Mali reveal charred Fonio grains in layers dated between 1200 and 1400 CE, just before the site's abandonment. In Jufour, on the Gambia River, Fonio appears in domestic layers from 1650 to 1900 CE, showing its cultivation endured deep into the early modern era. Across these centuries, Fonio remained more than a mere food source. Ethnographic records from the Bamana Kingdom and Hausa city-states describe coronations and funerals where Fonio was served only to royalty, with strict rules on who could harvest or even taste the first grain. The grain's journey was tightly bound to elite lineages, passing from one generation to the next as a symbol of legitimacy and cosmic order. Genetic studies back this up, revealing a corridor of continuous gene flow that traces the old trade routes, land-race diversity that has survived conquest, drought, and the arrival of new crops. In the words of a Dogon elder, Fonio is the ancestor's seed. We do not eat it lightly. This unbroken chain of ritual, restriction, and reverence stretches from the first Neolithic sowings to the present, anchoring Fonio's prestige in both the soil and the stories of West Africa. The grain's endurance among kings and priests hints at why its biological strengths, adaptability, and nutritional density were never just practical benefits, but qualities woven into the fabric of social power. Fonio's reputation as a climate-ready grain is not just a matter of legend or nostalgia. In agronomic trials across the Sahel, select lines of Digitaria exilis reach harvest in as little as 42 to 56 days, less than half the time needed for millet or sorghum, and a fraction of what imported rice requires. This rapid cycle is more than a curiosity. It is a lifeline for farmers facing unpredictable rains and shrinking planting windows. Anatomical studies show Fonio roots plunging deeper than 1 meter, tapping moisture reserves that lie beyond the reach of most cereals. In fields where the soil is sandy, rocky, or strongly acidic, conditions that frustrate wheat and rice, Fonio not only survives, it yields. Field plots from Mali to northern Ghana confirm productive stands at pH levels below 5.5 and at elevations above 1,000 meters, with optimal grains set between 25 and 30 degrees Celsius. The crop's adaptability is matched by its practicality. Fonio's grains, though tiny, cook in 5 minutes flat, an empirical claim tested in both laboratory and household kitchens, where timers routinely stop at under 5 minutes for a soft, non-sticky texture. In a real-time demonstration, agronomists pour Fonio into boiling water and count down 4 minutes and 45 seconds, and the grains are ready to serve. For rural households, this means less firewood, less time, and more flexibility at the end of a long day. These qualities, speed, resilience, and minimal input demands, explain why Fonio remains a staple for farmers working the margins of West Africa's climate and economy. The grain's biology is not an accident of neglect, but a quiet argument for its continued relevance, especially as drought and degraded soils become the new normal. In the context of global food security, Fonio's field advantages offer a direct challenge to the narrative that only imported or high-input crops deserve investment or attention. Fonio's nutritional profile quietly upends the very logic that once relegated it to the margins. The grain is naturally gluten-free, a fact that sets it apart from wheat, barley, and even most African millets. Its protein matrix lacks the gluten-forming gliadins and glutenins, making Fonio safe for celiac patients and anyone seeking alternatives to common cereals. But the surprises run deeper. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization, Fonio holds the highest calcium content of any known grain, averaging around 140 milligrams per 100 grams, far outstripping rice, wheat, or maize. This single statistic, tucked away in Food and Agriculture Organization nutrition tables, quietly contradicts the colonial-era branding of Fonio as nutritionally inferior. The real headline, though, comes from its amino acid profile. Most of the world's dominant cereals, wheat, rice, maize, and sorghum, are notoriously poor in methionine and cysteine, two sulfur-containing amino acids essential for tissue repair and child development. Fonio, by contrast, delivers 2 to 3 times more of these nutrients than its global competitors. Methionine levels approach 0.28 grams per 100 grams, and cysteine hovers near 0.33 grams, figures that leap off the bar charts in comparative assays. A nutrition scientist who has studied the grain puts it simply: Fonio does what rice and wheat cannot. It fills the gaps. In a world where dietary calcium and essential amino acids are often scarce, especially in regions facing chronic undernutrition, these numbers matter. Yet, as the bar charts make clear, the very grain dismissed as hungry rice by colonial scientists offers a nutritional edge that outpaces the imported staples favored in both policy and perception. The stakes of this oversight are not theoretical. They are written into the health of the communities who have depended on Fonio for millennia and into the research priorities that have too often ignored them. A single budget table from the French Colonial archives tells the story in stark numbers. Fonio and other so-called minor cereals received just 0.3% of research funding, while cotton and groundnut together claimed nearly half. The National Academy of Sciences, in its chapter on lost African crops, calls this neglect by decision, not oversight. In the 2 decades leading up to 1996, only 19 scientific papers addressed Fonio, barely a footnote compared to the thousands written on sorghum and millet. A National Academy of Sciences scholar put it plainly: Policy choices privileged cash crop research and left Fonio marginalized in both scientific literature and extension programs. The numbers are not just a symptom. They are the evidence. The deliberate underinvestment is visible in every line item, every research grant, every missing field trial. What looks like academic silence is, in fact, the residue of a colonial calculus that decided which crops and which histories deserved to be remembered. December 2018 brought a quiet but telling milestone. The European Commission granted Fonio novel food status under Regulation L3231, officially opening the door for its sale across the EU. For a grain with a pedigree stretching 7,000 years, this legal debut as a novelty is almost comic. In upscale markets from London to New York, a single kilogram of pre-rinsed Fonio now fetches $18, which is more per pound than imported basmati or quinoa. Chef Pierre Thiam, who grew up eating Fonio in Senegal, calls it the most ancient yet the most modern grain, and his Yolele brand has made it a darling of health food aisles. But the supply story tells a different tale. Guinea, the region's largest producer, harvested 483,906 tons in 2021. Across West Africa, total output hovers near 587,000 tons, nearly all grown and processed by smallholder families, most still pounding the grain by hand. The map of production is dense with effort but thin on infrastructure. Fonio's premium price tags and regulatory triumphs have not translated into broad-based investment or mechanized support for the people who know the crop best. The paradox is hard to miss. A so-called hungry rice now commands gourmet prices, yet its custodians remain locked out of the value they create. In every Fonio growing village, the heartbeat of the harvest is unmistakably female. Women like Aminata Diallo in Fouta Djallon and Mariam Koulibaly in southern Mali shoulder half the labor from field to mortar, their hands coaxing the tiny grains from stubborn hulls. The work is relentless. After weeding and cutting, the real bottleneck begins, pounding and winnowing, a process that can take hours for a single meal. Manual dehulling remains the norm, not by choice, but because the infrastructure never arrived. Labor surveys confirm that women account for roughly 50% of all tasks tied to Fonio, yet their expertise, knowing which landrace will thrive in rocky soils or how to judge the perfect dryness for storage, rarely makes it into extension manuals or policy tables. The cost of neglect is measured not just in missed research or slow adoption of mills, but in the daily reality of those who keep the grain's 7,000-year legacy alive, one pounding at a time. Today, Fonio's 5-minute grain sits on global shelves, yet its custodians, millions of West African women, still process it by hand. The naming paradox endures, a climate-proof superfood still neglected by research and infrastructure. Until the lens shifts, the unresolved contradiction remains. What name will we choose next?